second part of our forum, and it's all about Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, Namibia 2022, brought to us by the Digital Foundation of Namibia as well as Paradigm Initiative, and the theme this year towards a digitally inclusive Namibia. I'm Tonata, and we'll tackle the second half of the afternoon or of the day, starting now. For those of you who've been here since morning, we've had a couple of sessions. You've had a few of your questions answered, but we'll have more of your questions answered a little later on when our interactive session starts or kicks off. For now, we are starting with session 5, digital infrastructure and prioritization of ICT. And very interesting, what comes up, that always comes up in as many times as possible, is free public internet, like in the developed countries, right? That's all most of the people want, free Wi-Fi in certain areas they visit. Regular service disruptions will also be addressed, zero rating service. If some of these words are too big, they'll be broken down, and we'll understand by the end of the presentation. And this one will be handled by Mrs. Emilia Ngikembwa from CRAN, the Communications Regulatory Authority of Namibia, as well as Dr. Paulus Shetekela from IUM. If I could call upon Mrs. Ngikembwa to get us started. There she is, okay.
All right, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, we would just like to say thank you very much for inviting CRAN to be part of this engagement. I always say, as a country, we don't have enough platforms to talk things ICT. So when the invitation came, we were quite excited. And we were asked to speak about digital infrastructure and prioritization of ICT, and then there was many keywords that we had to touch on. Now, I just want to give a disclaimer that each one of those keywords for us as a regulator is a presentation on its own. But what we have tried to do is to put together a few slides that would hopefully, from a regulatory perspective and from the work that we do as regulator, speak to the topic. So to start off, I just want to share with you a few market structure facts about the Namibian ICT sector as far as the regulatory space is concerned. So what we have observed is that landline subscriptions continue to decline, but your XSDSL connections continue to increase. From an internet utilization perspective, 61% of all active SIM cards in the country are used to access the internet, which translates to 1.8 million SIM cards. Mobile revenue, or mobile data revenue rather, continues to increase, which is in line with the increase of the number of subscribers that are accessing the internet. Your fixed data revenue is also increasing, and this is once again in line with the increase of those fixed connections. But the landline revenue continues to decline, and this is because no one is using landlines. I think we all see the internet packages that also come with a landline, and then it just sits there, or you tell them not to connect it. From a connectivity perspective, first mile connectivity is sufficient for us as a country in terms of the redundancy that we have. And there is also room for us to expand it if the demand increases. However, compared to 26 African countries that we have done a study on, our broadband speeds in Namibia are very slow. And our 3G can hardly be called broadband, and I'll tell you why. Because currently, the minimum speed for broadband is supposed to be 2 megabits per second, but ours is on most days 1 megabit per second or slower, and this is why it would not qualify as 3G. Our 4G speeds are reasonable at 19 megabits per second on average, but there is still room for improvement because it depends on what time of the day do you get to experience that 19 megabits per second. Now, the other issue is mobile prices. We have done a study where we have compared ourselves on, or this was actually released on as a continental benchmark study, where they looked at the cost of a 5 gig bundle per month. Validity is 30 days. In the first quarter of 2016, Namibia was 4th cheapest in Africa. And the first quarter of 2021, we were 33rd. I don't even know if we can call us cheapest, but that is what the ranking is saying. Namibia is one of the most expensive countries on the African continent as far as mobile broadband is concerned. The cheapest product, there was another benchmark or another comparison that was done, and the cheapest product for a 1 gig prepaid monthly was $8.3 US, or this for Namibia, it was $8.3 US. When you look at other countries like Egypt, the same bundle was costing 60 US cents. South Africa was $4.7 US. And we are even more expensive than DRC, who is sitting at $4.3 US. What we have seen is that in the past, I think 6 years since the acquisition of Powercom by Telecom Namibia, the market would have reversed back into a monopoly. And the key symptom of a monopoly is typically that your prices keep going higher and higher. And this is why we have seen very little movement in Namibia's mobile market in terms of price competition. Our cheapest products, you would see, we have Awe Oye, which is standing at 123, and then we have Jiva from Telecom, which is standing at 147. But there isn't sufficient competition in the market to see a price drop. I think we will all recall when Powercom came into the industry, there was a serious price war. So on a Monday, a 1 gig would, for instance, cost $123 from one licensee. By Wednesday, another one would launch a promotion for $100. By the time we get to Sunday, it will be $50. Those are the symptoms of having a competitive market. But with ours that is slowly regressing back into a monopoly, these are the statistics that we are seeing. Then we also looked at the United Nations Broadband Commission, which has issued an objective that 2% of GNI per capita must be utilized to buy 1 gig per month. Now, at national level, Namibia, we are using 4.4%. And when you look at countries, or rather regions like your Kavangos, the Zambezi, it's then 10%. What this means is just that when you look at the disposable income per household, only 2% of that is supposed to buy at least a gig of data. But when we look in Namibia, you'd find that up to 4.4%. And when you look at other more remote places in the country, the percent is even higher, which means that the cost is really, really expensive. Now, the reason why I share this data with you is because what we are saying as regulator, it's never enough to speak about digital infrastructure. It's never enough to speak about prioritizing ICT if we don't understand what the current status is, which is limiting that prioritization and which is limiting that expansion. The second issue that I want to talk to you about today is the Universal Service and Gap Analysis. Now, the Communications Act calls for the creation of a Universal Service Fund. And the fund is supposed to collect money, and this money is supposed to be utilized to take infrastructure and connectivity to areas that do not have connectivity. The Minister of ICT has issued a universal service policy, and the policy objectives is really to ensure universal access to broadband infrastructure and services, to promote the development of content, applications, and innovations, amongst others. The policy objective is that there must be a minimum of at least 2 megabits per second download speed available to 80% of the population. And this is why earlier I was saying that our 3G is not really broadband per se, because even the minimum parameter that we have set for us as a country, that the SADC region has set, we are not getting that because it's supposed to be 2 megabits per second. And it gets worse because 2 weeks ago, we were in Luanda, Angola, where all the regulators in SADC came together, and a new target was set that by 2025, the minimum speed must be 5 megabits per second. Other countries like Botswana, I think, are already sitting at something like 30 megabits per second, and they have achieved that. So for us, we still have a long way to go. Now, what Universal Service focuses on is the infrastructure aspects of mobile broadband. So what we are saying is 3 components. There must be access, which is measured via population coverage. And then there must be usage, which is measured by the speed at which you receive it. And most importantly, there must also be affordability, because it's never enough that you make access available if consumers cannot afford that connection. We have spoken about this, but what I want to show you here, which is very interesting, is our 4G coverage. Because 4G is really considered as your broadband, technology. It's the technology that enables you to get onto the internet. So, and remember that the policy objective is that there must be 80% coverage. We have regions like Kunene. I'm not sure why it's doing this. Maybe it doesn't want me to show the map. Technical glitches, and they had to wait for someone from the regulator to have a technical glitch. Okay, so we have the Kunene region, which sits at 33%. We have Kavango West, Omaheke, Zambezi, which all sit. So Kunene, Kavango West, and Omaheke are all below 50%. And then we have Zambezi, Kavango East, which are below 70, and then Ochedenjupa, Hardap, Karas, Oshikoto are all below that particular policy objective. And then you have other regions which are better covered, such as Umsati, Ohangwena, Erongo, Oshana, and Komas. And then as a country, our average is currently sitting at 79%. So what we have done with the Universal Service Fund is, the idea is, as I said, to collect money. We know where the gaps are, and if you visit our offices, we can open up the entire GIS system and be able to show you. We know which villages in Kunene make up the 66 or the 76% that does not have coverage. We know which villages in Kavango East. We can tell you the name of the school that does not have connectivity. What the GIS has also shown us is that we have 1,800 schools in the country. Only 400 of those schools have some form of data connectivity. But the irony is also that that connectivity, chances are, is not even a connectivity that can be utilized by the students and the teachers. It's probably an ADSL line that is sitting in the principal's office. So we know where the gaps are. The unfortunate thing is that the Universal Service Fund is still sitting without money, and because we don't have money, we cannot utilize it to take out services to the consumers. So what we are saying is that the high broadband prices in Namibia are due to a lack of competition. I think I've spoken about this. The Universal Service Fund must be used to alleviate the high prices, especially the high prices for taking connectivity to unserved and underserved areas, specifically schools and clinics, so that students can also have access to this. And we are really hoping that the court battles that we have been experiencing as far as the fund is concerned are finally behind us, so that we can then start collecting that money and take connectivity to where it needs to be. The interventions that we are doing now is what we call demand side stimulation, where instead of paying an operator and say, go and put up a tower in this area, we are going to the schools and we are paying for the Wi-Fi, we are paying for the upgrade or the construction of new RAN sites. And once we have those RAN sites up and running, then the fund will continue to pay, I think for a period of 7 years, to pay for that connectivity so that the schools are able to utilize that. Then, which is really, and I'm heading into my final slides, I want to speak to you about liberalization of the regulatory framework. So I've mentioned earlier that the ICT industry has become very monopolistic, inherently monopolistic, in the sense that you have one operator that has 91% market share. And what we have been doing as regulator is trying to reposition ourselves from just issuing licenses and more licenses and more licenses, but really taking a keen look into the industry and say, what are the areas that we need to reform so that we can yield better results for the consumers? One of the ideas that we are mooting is a third national mobile broadband operator, because we are still hung over by the impact that Powercom had brought into the industry. So the moot question is really, if we were to have a third fully fledged mobile operator, that would perhaps upset the prices and see some benefits for the consumers. Then we are also looking at enforcing infrastructure sharing. And infrastructure sharing is very important when we speak about the digital economy for one major reason for a country like Namibia, because of the vastness of our geographic coverage or topology. So infrastructure sharing is really saying that if we are sitting in one village and village A has a transmitter for one operator and village B has a transmitter for another operator, then can these operators please share the infrastructure in village B? Can they allow each other to put up their infrastructure there so that the consumers have two choices? And whenever as a consumer you have choice, then it means that somehow the price will also come down. But if this is the only one person that you have, then you are forced to utilize that service at whatever ridiculous prices. What infrastructure sharing does, it also avoids the duplication of infrastructure, because we have seen very sad cases where village B is sitting without connectivity, but village A has 2 towers. And this is really the rudimentary definition of infrastructure sharing. We are also looking at zero rating services, some of the services at least, especially educational content, to just make sure that students are able to access that connectivity. But also another big one is the reduction of taxation on devices. Because as an ICT consumer, you pay tax on buying your device, you pay tax on airtime, you pay tax on everything. And the cost is already high. So we are also looking into, is there a possibility to either eliminate totally or maybe reduce the percentage, just to see what benefits that can yield. Then the other issue is, let me speak on the regulatory retail price ceiling, because I was asked a question 2 weeks ago. Somebody says, but if you are saying the prices are too high and as a regulator you approve these prices, then are you failing in your job, right? So what we are looking at is also regulatory retail price ceiling, and we are conducting a study on this to see whether there is room for us to direct the operators to reduce the prices, because as I said, the prices are simply too high. Then we have another irony where government is the main shareholder and the shareholder that controls both the two big operators in the country. So we are also looking at, is it possible perhaps to privatize certain portions of those entities to bring in private investment or local investment, and hopefully that will also change the market structure a bit. Now, other interventions, of course, would be agreements on regulatory and sector policies that encourage future infrastructure investments. We have two cables that are landing. I think there's another one that would be coming now. So the question would also be, how do we utilize those opportunities, especially with some of the countries that are landlocked? There's some of us that have approached us and said, but how can we benefit from this? So as a country, as far as infrastructure is concerned, we also have to reposition ourselves and see how we can benefit from that. Then reductions in the total cost of building and operating networks. I think these are ongoing discussions that we have to have with our operators. And the big one is really to share infrastructure so that there's no duplication of investment. And then, of course, the collaboration on infrastructure in order to maximize economies of scale and returns on investment. And then there is spectrum allocation. I think this is very big. Spectrum is what the operators utilize in providing the services. So we are also looking into how to make spectrum as an enabler. In other words, attaching rollout obligations to new spectrum allocations, but also ensuring that spectrum is utilized to set up infrastructure that is needed to provide services. And then, of course, the last one is for government to really strike a balance between being a policy owner and a shareholder within the industry. Because the issue, and I'm always very careful when I say this, because I still want to have my job when I go to the office. But I think the issue is this. So ICT is an economic enabler. There is no doubt about that. But the word ICT being an economic enabler is not magical in itself. It's not by saying it that your economy is enabled by ICT. There is a lot of things that you have to do. First being prioritizing ICT. We do not receive any capital investments into the ICT sector, not into the Universal Service Fund or into any of the other services that are being provided. All the service provisioning is left to the operators. And the reason why we have so many gaps based on the map that I would have shown you is because the operators do a good job in going to the remote areas, but we must understand that operators are business entities. They go where it makes economic sense. And the crafters of the Communications Act were aware of this, and this is why they deliberately put in place a Universal Service Fund. But the Universal Service Fund does not have money, and for as long as the fund doesn't have money, these numbers would remain like this. And this is why we are then saying that government needs to strike that balance between being a policy maker to achieve social objectives of ensuring that universal service is achieved, and on the other hand, being a shareholder within the industry. And what we as regulator push for is also for a policy mind shift. There's a lot of investments that are done, for which we are grateful for, into the road infrastructure, into the airports, into all other utilities, but we do not receive the same level of investment in the ICT sector. And when the pandemic came, the roads were closed, the airports were closed, and the only industry that really kept everyone connected was the ICT industry. But once again, those that were connected are only the 79% of the population, but and it was only 33% of the people in Kunene that were connected. There was another, is it 70? I don't know, my math is very bad, 77% that was not connected. So the question is, who is going to connect those 77% of the people in Kunene that have no connectivity? And this is really the mind shift which we as regulator are advocating for, if we are going to see ICT being prioritized. So I think our message is really that as regulator, we will do our best. We will ensure that there is access, that there is coverage, that there is affordability. But when it comes to the rollout of infrastructure, we need many partners to come to the fore and just see how we can really achieve the objectives that we are trying to achieve. And also, I think for investors, there's a lot of investment opportunities within the ICT sector, because just to cover that 77% of Kunene, there's many opportunities for investment into infrastructure, into access, and all of that. So yeah, I think that is really the long and short of our engagement today. Thank you very much for having us. Oh. Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Amelia. My name is Anna from the Internet Society, Namibia chapter. You shared a very insightful presentation there, especially the last bit in terms of infrastructure sharing and making investments in the areas of ICT. I know last year when we hosted the NAMIGF, there was talk of community network licensing and exactly setting the tone in terms of infrastructure for areas that are not covered. I'm also pleased to know that at least now there's a GSI map available. But in terms of the actual ownership, once you've begun the rollout of your project, who would then be the owners? Would it be the schools who you're paying the rent for, or would the infrastructure still belong to CRAN?
Okay, so thank you very much. I think CRAN is not in the business of owning infrastructure. Well, we do have our infrastructure, but not networks per se. And this is also why we do not want to pay the money to the operators, because the original business case was that we would pay to the operators, they will put up the network and then they run with it. But then we said, but if the money belongs to the fund, then it cannot become an operator's asset. And this is why what we will be doing now is that the investment will go and then it will belong to the school. So whatever infrastructure we put up, we live with the school. But we are also, it will take us a long way, but we then have to also start engagements with the Ministry of Education, because we don't want, come the end of the 7th year when the fund pulls away, then this becomes a white elephant. White elephant, yes. It becomes a white elephant. So we also want to have engagements with the Ministry of Education where we can then say, we'll take it for 7 years, but after 7 years, when you apportion the budget to the schools, then also include that cost so that it becomes then a sustainable project. And this is also the nature of ICT services. I think during lunch I was having a conversation with someone and they were saying, but if CRANE is focusing on access and coverage and affordability, what about literacy, you know? And CRANE cannot do it all, you understand? We have a mandate, but ICT is always a winner when the right collaborations take place. And this is why we need to keep the conversations going. I hope you're confident. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emilia. I'm really concerned about that last point about government, the possibility. I think I'm least hopeful about the capability for the government basically to reach that balance, being a shareholder on one hand, and also then supporting facilities such as the Universal Service Fund. I'm just wondering whether CRAN can consider perhaps alternative sources of funding, like grants from philanthropic organization and other opportunities globally even. Is that possible? Or maybe from a legal perspective or framework, is it a possibility? And if it is it something that perhaps CRAN can explore? Thank you.
Yes, of course. And we as regulator don't want to sit with that mindset that everything must come from government. This is why currently there is a project, it's called the GIGA project, which is being spearheaded by UNICEF and the International Telecommunications Union, where we are participating actively as a country because it's seeking to address some of the shortcomings, especially coverage to schools and connectivity and all of that. So we are looking into other avenues, and we don't want to sit with a mindset that everything must come from government. But I think what we are saying is that government needs to create that balance between a policy maker who has social economic objectives that must be met and a shareholder that receives dividends from the same industry that we are seeking to obtain, what do you call it? The social benefits for the consumers. Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, Ms. Amelia. My name is Grace. I wanted to know, you mentioned the issue of price ceilings, but I want to know how aggressive are you in terms of that? Because it's really, it seems to be an issue, the affordability issue. And then you spoke about 21%. Is that just particularly for Kunene region, or was it for the entire population that you spoke about?
Okay. So with the pricing, we are very aggressive. We have done a study, and I think 2 weeks ago we met our operators where we have specific recommendations that we wanted to discuss with them. But our message to them and our message to the consumer is that the prices are very high and the prices must come down because they are a barrier to the utilization and enjoyment of ICT services and products. So we are quite aggressive. I think it's just a matter of time. Once the engagements have been done and are concluded, then we will inform the public on the outcome of that.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Oh, sorry, she had a second question. The 79% is the population, the average for the entire country. And then for Kunene was 33%. Yeah. I've put it up again. Yeah.
My question is on with regards infrastructure sharing. There was a news that was out, I don't know if it was last year or this year, around that particular topic about a certain service provider that didn't want to share, even though another provider got license and to operate. I'm talking of MTN now. And there was a provider that didn't want to share their infrastructure. Is there an issue that they raised at that moment as to why they don't want to share their infrastructure in terms of the amount of people that would be on the same, I don't know, bandwidth, I don't know. Is there that danger to allowing or pushing for infrastructure sharing? And on the other end, what measures are you taking in dialoguing the government when it comes to these issues that you raise in terms of affordability, access, and all of that? How aware are they with your statistics and your findings that they are able to understand the importance of that balance that you mentioned? Hence, it becomes a thing where we have to ask ourselves, is the government aware about what you are aware about, and are they choosing not to take measures, or is it a thing where we're just leaving it on the down low?
Okay. So on the infrastructure sharing, I will give you an academic answer. Normally what happens with infrastructure sharing is that for as long as you are a dominant operator, you have a license obligation to share infrastructure. Now, what the framework then says is you need to look at your, your network. And if you have spare capacity, which you are not utilizing for your own needs, then you must share that spare capacity. If you want to reserve the spare capacity for your future, rollout, then you come to regulator and you say, regulator, I have 30% spare capacity that I'm not utilizing, but these are my future rollout obligations. Can you give me an exemption for sharing? Then you get that exemption. But if you don't have that exemption, then the obligation is that 30%, you must be able to share it. Now, what we get a lot of times with the complaints that come to us is that they would then come and say, but this person has 30% spare capacity, they don't have an exemption, but they are refusing to share. Or others would say, we don't have any capacity, our network is 100% fully utilized. And in such circumstances, the regulator must come in, do a network assessment, and find out whether you indeed have spare capacity. And if you do, then a directive is given for you to share. But you must remember also that the refusal to share is a competition issue per se, because refusal to share is saying that if I am providing services, you are a competitor. Now, the moment I give you capacity, then you are either going to take consumers from me, or you understand. That is where the real dynamic of it is. And this is why you have a lot of reluctance to share. But what we are saying is we look at it from a digital infrastructure and investment perspective to say it doesn't make sense. And infrastructure sharing is not just in the ICT industry. Even with the banks, they have infrastructure sharing. This is why you can belong to one bank, but if your bank is not there and you see another ATM of another bank, you can withdraw money from there. That is a typical example of infrastructure sharing. So it's nothing unique to the ICT industry. It's done everywhere. So that's really what we are saying. But the core of it is really a competition issue to say, if I don't share with you, then I keep you out and I maximize on what I'm able to get. Yeah. Sorry, you had another question. What was your first question again?
Second question was about the information
Yes. We have a very good relationship with our line minister and our line ministry, and we have constant engagements where we share with them our plans, our recommendations. So we do have that level of engagement. And this is why I'm saying, even with the pricing and universal service, it's all work in progress. And our minister is well briefed on those particular recommendations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to make a disclaimer. The views expressed not of the ministry, but of Elizabeth Kamutfedu. As the researcher in the field of ICT, those issues can go to where they belong. Our boardrooms are open, current boardrooms are open, so we tackle them. You have just mapped out how Namibia have rolled out the infrastructures and so on. But the problem is not connectivity alone. And you have said it well that, yes, CRAN cannot do it alone. The thinking is this infrastructure, like even the 30% in Opua, what is the optimal usage? What is the adoption of that infrastructure? Where X operator invests millions. Go to my village, I'm telling you now, no one is online. We have a 3G mobile tower. There will be a lot of excuses. And this comes into an ASA framework. ASA mean access, skills, and attitude. These three things determine the uptake or the adoption of certain digital services, especially in the rural areas. Even here in Windhoek, most of us use this data for social media. Even students, you get 15 gigs per month. Half of that goes to social media. You can't log in tutorials and so on. The issue is how to make use of this infrastructure that people get the benefits that derive from this infrastructure is very critical. And in Namibia, our adoption of ICT, I'm not talking about being on social media, the real adoption to get the real benefit from it is still minimal. A person will even think of going to the bank while you have everything in your hand, but sometimes it's awareness, like I said, it's attitude. Attitude goes with an awareness. It goes to cultural norms and other stereotypes that even cybercrimes are people are afraid even to do banking and so on. But that's what we need also to advocate with service provider. Connectivity is not only the towers there. And that goes that when you put those towers, what are the community needs and aspirations? Do we determine that beforehand? Or we do it the top-down approach? Yeah, Okunene, there are 3 communities. The ministry have said connect rural communities. Who are these rural communities? First, you have to prioritize where are the needs. Maybe I will go first whether it is a school or where it is a clinic, because these people need quick services maybe to connect. So we need to do a survey of community aspirations and needs before we roll out these infrastructures. I might sound like this infrastructure might end up as white elephant if adoption of these digital services is not optimal. That's my comment. The issue of, yes, CRAN cannot do it alone, I understand. The issue of infrastructure sharing, I also want to rephrase it and say, maybe we must do it infrastructure partnership. Because the approach also is not fair. At setup, you come and roll on. Let's engage each other at the initial stage of construction. You invest, I invest, isn't it? Then we all do it. Then now I put up my tower, you want to come on board. You understand? There is also other dynamics at play. So let's call it maybe a partnership from the beginning. I know MTC have more than 100 and something towers to roll out. Why can't we begin at the initial stage that you add your money, you add your cent, I add my cent, we go together. Then I first set up, then you roll on. It's a bit also problematic in terms of competition and other dynamics at play. Thank you very much.
Yes. Let's start with the issue of literacy. I think I was telling somebody once, I had a very interesting conversation during lunch, and I was saying to her that, look, when people hear ICT, then they think it starts and ends with CRAN. It doesn't. Our role as regulator is access, usage in terms of the right speed, quality, and affordability. But that is not the full value chain of ICT. There is another element which is literacy. There is another element which is ensuring that people have the devices. Because it doesn't help, we use the Universal Service Fund to set up the towers, but people don't have the phones or people don't have the skills. But then the question is, whose responsibility is it to ensure that people are computer literate? Because that is not really the mandate of the regulator. When you look at countries like Botswana, what the government in that country has done is they've set up a fund. In that fund, they've put in money and they pay. Each school in Botswana has a computer science teacher who is paid by the fund, and this person is teaching the kids and the community's computer skills. So, and this is why I said at the beginning that if we are truly going to embrace the full benefit, the full and real value chain of ICT, then there is a lot of change management that needs to happen, and there's also a lot of collaboration that we need to do. On the issue of infrastructure sharing, my sister Elizabeth, that argument is the reason why we have duplication of infrastructure, is the reason why we have communities sitting without connectivity. Just to understand infrastructure sharing as an economic concept. So it's not a tit-for-tat arrangement. It's not if you don't contribute, it's just me that is investing. You are able to invest because of consumer money. The money that the operators have, which enables them to set up all this infrastructure, is consumer money. And this is why the economic arrangement is that as a consumer, for as long as I have bought airtime, I have contributed to the rollout of that infrastructure. And hence, I must never find myself in a village where I'm unable to use services because you are holding on to infrastructure that has been funded by consumer money. And I think it's that particular school of thought that is holding the industry back and that is leaving consumers without services. And we have had it many times, but that is not what economic theory is saying. And this is why we are also saying that it's also not unique to the ICT industry. If you are with a bank, wherever you go, except if you just don't want the additional charge, you must be able to withdraw money. So this is why, for us, I think we are saying infrastructure must be shared, and reciprocity is not and will never be a requirement. Okay.
No, I can't do 30 seconds, so I will find my ways of getting these answers. Yeah, I mean, I have loads of questions. I mean, and I always feel very conflicted as the organizer. All right. All right. So couple of questions. The first one is, you mentioned about discussions where you met with operators and asking them the prices to come down.
what follows after that. But because I know a business will not voluntarily just decide to lower my price if there is nothing that enforces me to do that. That's number one. The other is the Universal Service Fund. Yes, we are aware of all of the issues that has brought the fund where it is right now. I mean, through my many other hats, in engaging with the operators, it seems that the fund isn't communicated to them in a way that they see value in investing. So is there a way? I think I had the conversation here about disabilities. We had a lot of conversation here about gender and ICT. Is there a way that we could see those as values and sell those for them to be investing? The other question, if you can just go back to your slide where you had your the map or the 4G statistics, you have 79% there, and you have, yeah, it's just a bit conflicting. I have other sources of this data, and I think this is also a problem in our country. We have so many data that is not speaking to one, and it would look like, as a researcher, and I think this is something that can be shared by other people, that you could be seen as lying or presenting, information that is not factual. So maybe just where do you get this? How regularly updated is it? What is the most reliable for the public to get it from CRAN? Is it better to take CRAN's data or ITU's data? It is always that confusion for us. Yeah, I have so many questions, Amelia, but I think we will find our ways to engage one-on-one or through other formats. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Emilia. Honestly, I think you have really done justice to that topic. I usually don't speak like that, but I feel you have done justice to the topic. Maybe what I pick up, maybe something that I want you to engage. You see, I take it that we are really, in terms of, we are behind the curve, really, compared to other countries in terms of, and our, it's kind of expensive, and we are behind. I'm trying to understand really what is really the problem? Why our internet is expensive? Maybe just some ideas around that, especially the mobile broadband. You say it's quite expensive, and I think for me it doesn't really. I need something that one could at least understand. It doesn't make sense to me.
Me too.
The other point really that I feel like maybe, especially the colleagues from the Ministry of ICT, I see when you hear the presentation from CRAN here, what Ms. Emilia is really saying to us, you have your children, you are the ministry responsible for communication in the country, and then you have operators or institutions that you set up, so to say. And the other one now, CRAN want even to enter the domain of providing services in terms of to school. But this is known by the ministry, whether it's MTs, whether it's telecom, whether it's whoever. But it seems like I don't have a better words to describe this, but I just want you colleagues, this is how we are failing the nation. Because it's known, if we don't do anything, and then if you escalate the discussion, you're going in the continent, we are behind, and it doesn't make any sense why we have expensive internet, and then it's only concentrated on a certain company or institution. So I feel really we are not doing justice. And as a ministry, we must provide leadership to this issue. It cannot be resolved otherwise. It's only the ministry that is able to provide leadership and really provide leadership to, because for me, this is where I see the problem. The whole morning I was here, this is the topic presentation that give me kind of, it's an antidote to all the crises that we are facing as far as telecommunication and technology crisis in the country is concerned. This is what's providing the information. And I feel like, honestly, when I see the president, I will tell him, come president, the issue is the ministry. It's nothing else, it's the ministry. I'm not joking. These things I will convey it even in my own personal capacity to say no. So, colleagues, that is my view.
Yes. Okay. I think the universal service has been communicated to the operators. They know about it. They know it's a license condition, but there was reluctance from some of them to contribute into the fund, and this is why they went to court. So I think the reluctance for us, at least based on the information that we have, is not so much that there is a lack of understanding on the benefits. I think there is a reluctance to pay their dues into the fund so that we can receive the services that they are supposed to provide. The sources of data, this is based on our GIS system. It's updated every quarter, and it's based on coverage statistics that we get from the operators. It's also based on the ITU parameters, and it's the same information that we submit to ITU as a country report and also to SADC. On the issue of the internet being expensive, we are also currently studying it to find out why. Some of the issues that we are picking up is a lack of competition, because when you have one operator that has 91% market share, then you don't really have a competitive environment. And one of the symptoms of a lack of competition is always high prices. The other issue that we are also picking up is the backhaul cost for the provision of, telecommunication services. So it appears those backhaul costs are also very high, and then it's passed on to the consumer, which makes the retail price also very, very high. So I think that is really the long and short of it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ngikembwa, for imparting all that information and sharing all the knowledge with us. She's from CRAN, the CEO, touching on digital infrastructure and prioritization. I think we all picked up a lot of information, correct? Okay, while we're looking at the photo op, if we can get back to the program, because I do not want to keep Dr. Paulus Shetekela from IUM waiting for too much longer. Is he here? Oh, there we go. All right, so he'll also be touching on the same subject. We are, of course, when it comes to time, so bear with us. Please come and do your thing. Present to us. The subject is, I'm trying to keep it light so we can still keep that same energy we had for Mrs. Ngikembwa. I saw everyone was excited. Thank you so much for making time for us, and I'm sorry that we kept you waiting.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just before I start, I just want to highlight something on ICT infrastructure, the last topic the gentleman asked on rollout, especially when it comes to mobile rollout around in the country. So from the ministry 2018, I was in the ministry from 2015 to 2018 as a technical advisor to the minister, Chekero. And we left the project with MTC to roll out 524, and the budget was allocated to MTC. And there is the current tower that they are currently rolling out right now. So that's additional to ICT infrastructures that they need to roll out in terms of mobile. So just a bit of information to that so that you also have a clear understanding of where the ministry has been. For the past years, I wasn't there because the ministry have changed, and then the colleagues carried on at MTC with the project. The topic is similar, the same. I did remove some of the things that not merely concern to me as an academia. I'm from IUM as a director of ICT services, and also partly contribute to the ICT faculty at the university by teaching. What I'm going to cover is ICT infrastructure itself, my content on regular service disruption, what causes service disruption in the country, and what are the major causes and how telecommunications companies and industries are going around it to provide service and to ensure that these regular disruptions don't occur. Much free services, zero rating services, and free public Wi-Fi. And also liberalizations, licensing, and ICT dedicated budget, and the other aspect of the domain, the country domain.na. So just a brief to give you a definition of what is an ICT or digital infrastructure. It's computing system, data storage systems, advanced instruments and data repositories, visualization environments, and people, human capacity, that are all linked together by software and high performance networks to ensure that there is improvement in research output, industry productivity, social economic developments, which will also enable breakthroughs that perhaps not otherwise were possible without the use of ICT infrastructure. So that's basically the definitions. There are various, many of them. So I chose that one just to give you a highlight of what they are. And the types, common components of digital infrastructure, as we know, we do have hardware, which is physical things that we can touch, servers, computers, laptops, and network cables and switches. And we also do have software. And this is the most critical thing today. You can have software. If you don't have enough capacity in your servers and your hardware, you still have nothing to do. And if you don't have software applications that enable you to process or to run or automate your routinely manually process in a business for it to run smoothly, then you will also not achieve anything. So, and apart from that, the people that you also have must be capacitated to make sure that they use appropriate and adequately ICT infrastructures and software systems to make sure that the processes and challenges that are in the community are well understood and desired solutions are provided. In Namibia, mostly we are concerned of the network capacity, internet per se. But this all has to come from telecommunication companies because they are the sole providers of network in the country, specifically telecom, that is basically the owner of the backbone of the network in the country. And most of the service providers are running on telecom infrastructures to provide service to end users. So the capacity we have in the undersea cable, which we call WACS, it's 5 terabits per second. That's 5,000 gigabits per second. Now, from Swakopmund to Windhoek to Okahanja to Oshakati, Katima, Rehoboth, you barely have 40 gig per second. That's a limitation already. So the end users, if you divide the so if you divide the end users that are using the network, it already limits the speed to certain megabits per second to end users. And end users capacity is 25 megabits. That's the maximum you can get your household, and only if you have fiber connection in your neighborhood, and cost you about 2,500 Namibian dollar, which is very expensive. So that's the capacity we have in the country and the capacity we have alongside our ocean. So we are not using or utilizing that capacity in the sea. So the service providers on their internet download capacity, as we have them in the country, as you can see on the table there, we are ranging from 2 megabits per second to 17 megabits per second. So, and this shows that now we are comparing megabits to 5,000 terabits, 5,000 gigabits. The margin is very, very high. And that's why in world ranking, the capacity of download compared to other countries in the world is between 50 to 60 megabits per second. That's for end users. And within Namibia, we are very low, less than 5 megabits per second. Worldwide, we are ranked 114 in mobile network capacity on fixed broadband and 150 on the fixed broadband. So in Africa, we are in the 30th, but do we still want to be there, or we have to improve? So in order to improve the capacity of our network, so we need our telecommunication industries, with the help of the ministry, to ensure that there is specific budget to it, there is appropriate infrastructures in place. And for you to have appropriate infrastructure in place, you need to have experts that understands the task and challenges the country face. From my topic now on regular disruption, what mainly causes the regular service disruption in the country is that our telecommunication companies have old infrastructures. They are aging and they crash based on old technologies coupled with a lot of bundled subscription to a license also that are expensive. Power failure, theft of batteries and solar panels. This is activities by end users also. Server crashes, hacking. These are mainly less occurrences in the country. A network theft infrastructure of stealing copper wires. In some instances, when thieves go to a cable, they found out it's fiber, they just vandalize because it's not copper. They found out it's fiber or something else that they are not able to get money. So that's vandalism to the industry, and it causes disruptions. And in some instances, it takes longer days because some of the network are main highways for the network between towns. And for one telecom company to run around the perimeter to seek where the damage is takes time. So, and that's also one of the things that distribute to service disruption. And in most cases, we do also subscribe to highly expensive license subscriptions that we pay as telecommunication industries. Not only that, but many businesses in Namibia, because we don't have software industry in the country, we buy softwares that are licensed, and we therefore need to pay. And in some instances, there are no funds available as budget allocated to many of the telcos, coming after 3 or 4 months, and the suppliers of these licenses cut off the services. And negotiation has to go in place, and that's when the service is coming back to when resolutions of such negotiations are reached. So the free services that telecommunication industries providing in terms of zero rating services, telecom offers, for example, zero rating internet services in critical infrastructures and emergency services. So for you to call certain ambulances, hospitals, we do remember during COVID, there was telephone links or lines that were provided for free to dial if you have any incidents. All those are going on the cost, either on the government or the telecommunication industry themselves. So currently, we also have a research hub in NAST and UNAM for high performance computing that is given telecom by Telecom 1 gigabits per second, free of charge. That's also one of the things that the telecommunication industry is offering. And additionally to that, the exchange of our data currently through telecom, they are being hosted and exchanged for free. That's between licensed operators in their host at Pioneers Park and the Telecom Center headquarters. Free public internet Wi-Fi, this is something that is lacking in the country. We don't have public internet Wi-Fi that is free unless you go to UNAM or IUM or NAST, but you also need to subscribe. If you are a guest, you are given a certain limited amount of time so that you can use the internet. So, but in township, in many countries, you go to town center or in suburb ways or in transports like public buses, you get free internet Wi-Fi. But in Namibia, it's very, very lacking. And you find also probably in most gathering restaurants, you go there, you can get free Wi-Fi, but there's nothing much one can do in a restaurant rather than eating or having a conversation and drinking water. Yeah. So the aspect still remains, even though telecom and MTC offers certain packages with free data, it's still kept and is still limited to compare to other countries or to other global players in certain economic situation like Namibia, countries that are in the same level of economic positions offer more than what our telecommunication industries are offering for free. In terms, not free, but you pay for a certain amount and they give you additional amount of data to use and utilize for your needs. And the main thing that still remains is that the speed is very slow and the amount of data that you are getting is very low and you still have to pay more money. In terms of now rolling out infrastructure, there are certain constraints also that are experienced by MTC, telecoms, and other license operators, which is limited to access to land, environmental impact assessments. That's one thing, or the process that takes longer. And these are the activities that CREN and MICT need to take or come together and establish a certain committee that will look into the development of or ICT infrastructure development and environmental impact assessment that the telecommunication industries are facing without, as I said, abduction to laws and standards, because these have to be all considered in terms of having proper infrastructure in the country. The major aspect that now causes expensive internet, expensive network coverage is cost of software licenses that telecommunication industries are using. So there are multiple softwares that they are using, counting from accounting, finance, HR, all those need to be paid. Billing systems that they use, they need to be paid. And this accounts now to end user to pay for these bills. And with that in mind, telecommunication industries need to look into models on how to improve and develop in-house capacity or skills to develop their own capabilities in essential areas, as telecom is doing. So just in brief, what we have done at IUM is that we also had similar situation where we subscribed to many licenses, firewall, other applications, VPNs. But what we have done is do away with those license subscriptions and focus our fundings to other proper, adequate infrastructures that we need, storage, additional storage that we may need, and then also development of our in-house software capacities. And with this, we are doing in the collaboration with the ICT faculty, where we get students, put them on internship program, and they develop the softwares that we need. The other aspect that is also keeping our prices and hosting services very high is the .NA. So this is a country domain name extensions that is owned privately by specific individuals. It's not by governments. And it is currently associated with higher cost of domain name registration, your website hosting, more than any other country in the world. So there is no also insurance in security, and it may fall in wrong hands because an individual can sell it to whoever is willing if the funds is enough for him. So that's one thing that our country is facing or is standing. So the current ownership model has negative implications to telecom industries and to business owners to host their website and having a domain.na, that is a country domain extensions. This is not only telcos, but private companies also, and the hosting of services in the country that becomes very, very expensive. So here is merely the government through MICT and CREN to find appropriate legislations to explore on how to gradually take ownership of the .NA domain name extensions. And this will guarantee uninterrupted and safe services for future at an affordable rates. So in order to have ICT infrastructure or proper ICT infrastructures, as we all understand, IT infrastructures are elements that are required to deliver business services. So, and these business services requires the understanding or experts that have an understanding in the requirements of the task that is positioned before them, and also the state of challenges and the level of desired solution, as I explained from the beginning. So this will enable the country, the institution, to optimize the implementation and cost of the ICT infrastructures, not to have expensive end user cost, but at least optimized to a certain way that industries should be able to offer service delivery to the people at an affordable rate. And this has to be done closely with educational institutions, especially higher educational institutions, where they need to set standards, sets of IT skilled personnel that they need. Crane may need, MICT may need. And this can only be done if there is collaboration and integrated education and industry between the academia and the industry and the government. So currently what MTC has done is they are rolling out an internship program. They provide funding for the students, which is enough money to cater for their transportation. And they offer this to any institutions that is willing to offer internship to students. So MTC pays for the students, and the students go under internship programs in various organizations at their own cost. So, and this also provide the platform where the academia, the industry, and the government need to build a set of profile that is combined with skills and knowledge required in the ICT industry. So an ICT profession in schools, in colleges, in university, and the industry must be determined through the government projects, where the government and the education ministry provide a set of skills to industry-related sectors, so that anyone who is graduating from a school or college must have specific standard skill sets that are required to improve the country's socio-economic development. Now, when it comes to prioritizations of ICT infrastructure, if you do not have proper planned ICT infrastructure in place, so you are likely to fall into issues of connectivity, as we have it, higher cost of internet, productivity, service delivery is not on time, security issues, people don't trust buying their things on internet, and also higher cost, which allows you now to spend more than what is required. And this all leads to systems that are not trustworthy, unreliable ICT services that are very costly, and dissatisfaction to government and end users and businesses in the country. So in order to now have proper ICT infrastructure, what is the benefit when you have personnel, professional cadres that understand the task before them? You have the benefit of setting up IT infrastructures that are properly maintained or properly optimized. And this provides you with the provision of continuous access to website and online platforms to ensure positive customer experience, timely develops a market solution, and also enables real-time data collection and analysis for businesses and their stakeholders, and this will also enable them to make appropriate decisions in time. And this will also increase productivity to employees, provide flexible, reliable, secure, and scalable infrastructure. So that's basically the benefit of having skilled professionals that enables you to set proper infrastructure in the country. So in all essence, as we understand, I don't know whether you are aware that the country as we don't have a national data processing facility. So this is one thing that Namibia need, computing infrastructures, data centers in every region, at least to a capacity of a 3-tier or a 2-tier data center. So for data processing and also for data storage. So the network infrastructure also need to change, because we are sitting at 40 gigabits per second while we have 5 terabits, 5,000 gigabits per second landing in Swakopmund. But inland, we only have 40 gigabits. So, and this when we have now upgraded our network to faster and high performance network, then we can be able to talk of massive data, big data, artificial intelligence, fourth industrial revolutions. So otherwise, if we start talking of fourth industrial revolutions with 1 megabits per second as broadband, we will not achieve anything. So otherwise, we will just be preaching. Additionally, with softwares, systems and application softwares are required. So in many countries, we do see what is happening in Europe or East Asia, disruption of services. People are owning system, they cut you off. So if you misbehave, you are cut off. If you are not attending to what the owners of the system wants, they cut you off. If you are not paying, they cut you off. So instead of not finding ourselves in this situation, we need to be prepared and make sure that we develop in-house systems and application softwares and use of customizations of open free source softwares that we can be able to customize according to our needs. Additionally, on ICT dedicated budget, so this is very much required because currently we have budget, but it's not that to fund capital projects. And a significant amount of investment is required to deploy latest appropriate technologies. So in this essence, telecom also need to expand because they are the one holding the backbone of the country. It's fiber backbone transmission, and the challenge to them is a constraint to limited budget or cost of capital expenditure, which is very high. Fiber to home deployment, it's not possible without budget or allocated funding. And extent of LTE to 5G, if you don't have capital project to upgrade and improve your network, you will not achieve anything. So the shortage of budget funds leaves no room to many state-owned enterprises and the mismanagement to an extent to look for funding elsewhere. And this is also red flagging the self-sustainability that you all talk about and digital sovereignty. So if we use Google Cloud, if we are using Oracle databases, then we are obviously obliged to be paying higher license subscription every year, every month. And the service to end users will be very high. So in terms of that, ICT dedicated budget is required and should address digital infrastructure upgrade. It should also address the educational programs that are tailor-made to develop professional experts in the industry at local universities, also and abroad, and also create employment for such professionals through realization of capital projects and continuous research and development, innovation and entrepreneurship. And also develop our own secure software platforms that will host our e-services. So we are talking of EIDs. On whose platform are we hosting it? We are paying subscription for licenses. E-governments, we are paying license subscriptions. So, and these are the aspects that one need to look into when you are an ICT expert in the country. From the ministry perspective, they should be driving this agenda of self-sustainability and having data sovereignty. So just a few to conclude, the fourth and fifth industrial revolution, currently we are in fourth sort of industrial revolution, but it's ending soon. So we are talking of Internet of Things. All these need to have proper, or let me say, professional expert in the country. So currently we have few of them. And if you have to engage in a project, you will need to acquire foreign experts to realize your projects. Big data, smart cities, specific budget and accountability in the implementation of such national project is required. This is now to improve our network capacity, establishment of those digital infrastructures, creation of employment platforms for higher professional cadres, the establishment and promotion of funding in ICT research, development and innovation, and also establish funding platform for entrepreneurs. Currently for software developers specifically, we don't have any platform that has been enabled for them to make sure that they utilize their skills they get from either UNAM, NAST, or IUM. So, and also enabling platform for software development in the country. I thank you for your attention.
We will only have time for 2 questions. Very brief. Not the same people. Ministry. I have been on spot, so. Ministry, I'll give you a chance, but I'd like to hear from someone else. Only 2 questions. Let's keep it brief. Okay. Mrs. Elizabeth, you can go. You don't, are you still someone else with a question? No? Okay, it's only you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You've got one. The microphone is.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that very, very insightful presentation. I think you should bring other evidence to the light. First, I would love to say thank you for bringing up that indeed the government have initiated a coverage project. By then, we call it 100% population coverage. That is radio, TV, and mobile networks, and where all the operators were called together to drive this project. But it ended up with MTC, now it's called 081 everyone. So don't ask me what transpired. So the initiative was there. So it's now only with MTC, which is called 081 everyone. That was a government initiative. Moving forward, you have also bring a new revolution to the light. We have been talking about the cost driver of this, our data, internet. And our focus was more on hardware infrastructure. Now you said software as well. So there is a second cost driver that our software costs or expenditures also contribute to the high cost of internet. And you said Mitri. Mitri is a teacher in my language. You said we need developers, software developers. Mitri is over to you with the 3 institutions, NAST and UNAM, and your institutions. These faculties are so long old, 10 years old. Where are the software developers? Where are we? NAS students, UNAM, where are they? So it is over to you too. We need to explore that. The other thing is the .NA. I'm really from the ministry. We are amending the Communications Act, and we have far much advanced. And the .NA is there, but we never implement it for a reason. It belongs to a private entity. And now also it's revealed that it's costly. It's one of a driver of high cost of internet. And we were worried about more the ownership and sustainability, because if something belongs to someone who's neither not paying tax, not even regulated by the regulator, it's just doing the business. But we are amending the Communications Act to find a way. I'm wrapping off. So I wanted to say thank you very much. But colleagues from the other side, not when you are in government, let's explain what does free Wi-Fi mean. Somebody is covering the cost somewhere. There's nothing like free. So let's explain that to the masses. What does free Wi-Fi mean? If you go to a cafe and you find a Wi-Fi, it's free. It's free for you to use, but it's never been free to set up. So let's explain that. I'm saying colleagues from the other side, not me in the government. I understand it differently. Thank you.
My question, thank you, sir, for the presentation. My question is just trying to understand. I want you to maybe speak hypothetically in the academia, speaking about the 5,000 gigabytes that we say we have underwater, and we are only utilizing 40 gigabytes. Do you think this is a business benefit in a way? Why this is so? Because I believe that our telecommunication network or service providers are aware about this. I believe they know this. And this is information this is also why we need open data. This is information that is even new to me as well. So it's a question to you. Is there a business motive behind it? Because I know there are those that have almost 5G network in the country that have access to that. But yet the wider public are not having adequate access to network, the bandwidth that we have. What is the reason in your opinion?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Reasoning can be many. One would say hypothetically ignore other aspects and say it's the ignorance. But when you now look at the budget allocated to perhaps telecommunication industry does not allow them to upgrade their infrastructure. It's been 4 years now. The wax cable landed, I think, 2009, 2010 in Swakopmund, and it's been about 12 years now, and you are still sitting on 40 gig. At the time, 40 gigabits per second was sufficient because it was also costly to implement the project. And the other aspect is the focus on return on investment. How do the company wants to return their investment, whether it's in long term or in short term, and how much was the cost? That can also implicate that they remain at a specific speed so that they can incur their cost that was initially put up, and then be able to now upgrade. But as we all understand, the internet speed is very low in order to leverage the speed that is from the wax cable to inland capacity, is that you just need a few devices. And in current days, you have very cheaper devices with software-defined network and network function visualization that you can easily use to maximize the speed from 40 gig to even 400 gig. So, and that's where the challenge is. The implementation, or the expert has an understanding in the past that the network is sufficient, but when the time comes, we know technology is rapidly advancing, and not everyone is able to catch up. And if you are able to catch up in capacity or in mind, then your funding may not be able to catch up. So that may have contributed. I may not say it's the cause, but to my view, that could also be some of the explanation to why we are only having 40 gig while we have 5,000 gigabits landing in Swakopmund.
Thank you, Dr. Shetekela. Very insightful indeed, the information he shared with us. Let's continue session 7, rather 6. I've jumped a session there. Artificial Intelligence National Strategy by Mrs. Grace Hamauka from the 4th Industrial Revolution Task Force. I don't know, Dr. Shetekela sort of took the wind out of our sails with that one, with the amount of data, gigabytes and terabytes we have available, how we can make AI work. She here? Oh, sorry, I'm not familiar with the face. My apologies. Welcome and thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, they're just going to help me because I'm a little bit tall, so the mic needs to be adjusted a bit. Can come a little bit until. Will it pick it up? Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Grace. I'm from the 4th Industrial Revolution, and I have a very easy task this afternoon. So I'll get into my presentation. I hope you can hear me because I feel because I'm a bit tall and yes. Okay, so the previous speaker has spoken a little bit about the 4IR, but last year the president appointed a task force to look at just do a country assessment in terms of, as a country, Namibia, are we ready for 4IR or not? And so I form part of that, that committee, and together with my colleague, Nashilongo. So those are the different various revolutions. I don't want to get into that. Like my previous, this previous speaker has spoken, is that in fact, we're actually about to leave the 4th industrial revolution, getting into the 5th industrial revolution. In fact, some countries are already busy with the 5th industrial revolution. So what is our mandate as a task force? Our mandate as a task force, as appointed by the president, was just to do a country assessment. As a country, are we ready to leverage the benefits that one can get from 4IR? And so what happened is that we were tasked with doing that, and we presented our first initial report last year in November, and then our next report is due in June this year. And then we'll also convene 4IR conference later in June, or on the 8th of June. So the task force is divided among work streams. We got thematic chapters from the president that he wanted us to work on. And those thematic chapters are, for example, looking at the core 4IR technologies, looking at the legal framework, looking at research and development, skills, MSME, and all of that. So it's in total six work streams that are just looking at various thematic chapters. Yes. So those are the members of the task force. It's being headed by our chairperson, Prof. Anisha Peters, and like I said, Nashilongo Khrvashi, she's also serving on the task force. And then we have some foreign nationals that are also serving on the task force based on their expertise. And then we have a presidential advisor that is overseeing the task force. So that is Grace there. I'm a trained economist. So my background is economics. I work for Bank of Namibia, but I'm heading the work stream on the legal legislation and governance. That's what I'm heading on the task force. So we also have some ministries that are supporting the task force, and we also have some research volunteers from various institutions like the University of Johannesburg and so forth. So what are we doing? What is the methodology? Methodology, we are looking at design thinking, data collection, and it's a little bit difficult for me, benchmarking and the likes. So what have we done this far as a task force? We have had various stakeholder engagements. We have a total of approximately 47 stakeholder engagements. We have met 120 public and private enterprises, met 13 ministries, and had high-level engagements and so forth. So what has come out as major challenges and pain points? And first and foremost, and that is why I was actually invited here, or the task force was invited, is Namibia does not have a national digital strategy. And that is definitely the starting point. And then there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of data. In fact, data sharing is a problem across even ministries or across institutions and all of that. And then skills is definitely a very big problem. And then we also need a legal framework, or the legal fraternity is not ready. We have realized that many of the Namibian laws are either obsolete or very old, so they have not been able to keep up with emerging technologies. So that came out as a very important or a challenge. And then funding and investment, of course, and then also aging ICT infrastructure in government particularly is a problem. But I saw that my previous speaker has mentioned that even in the private sector or in the ICT industry, it is a problem. And then international payment gates and cash outs. For example, when we were meeting the creative industry, they were telling us that because much of their work is done on Google, on YouTube, so they get paid by internationally, but they are unable to get that money out. So what we did is we went out, met the Bank of Namibia, met Payment Association of Namibia, and tried to look for how can that be addressed. So that definitely came out as a pain point. And then definitely electrification is also a problem, particularly in the rural areas, definitely. And if you want to harness 4IR, you need to address electrification. And then research and development, definitely. Particularly we have realized that most of the institutions, their R&D departments are either hosted in South Africa, but never in Namibia. So that definitely also came out as a challenge or a pain point. So my task today was, is there an AI strategy? No, Namibia does not have an AI strategy. And there's not even an African country that has an AI strategy. So even a national digital strategy we don't have, but there is work that is being done around that. For example, as a task force, we found that there was a concept note that was lying around that was already approved by cabinet, just to be implemented, but that is just a national digital strategy for the ICT sector. So what we are suggesting or what we are recommending as a task force is that we need an aggregate or holistic digital strategy that we can run with as a country. And that is not yet there, but definitely there is some work happening in that. So in terms of a national digital strategy for ICT, we found, or we got some funds from GIZ, and there is work that is happening in the background. And before the end of the task force mandate in June, end of June, we should be able to deliver on that. Leading thoughts. Definitely, like I said, to develop, we need, as a country, we need a national digital strategy, and it needs to be an aggregate digital strategy, because we have also discovered that most of the sectors that we have met, they do have strategy, but it's sectoral. So we need something that is aggregate, to look at it from a holistic point of view. And then localize R&D is very important. Improve international payment transaction and payment gates, and then definitely establish a national AI institute is very much on the agenda, or as a task force, we are working on that. So what is it that you need to expect from the task force? Okay, in June, we are convening Namibia 4IR conference. It's going to be a policy platform. It's going to be convened by the president and chaired by the president as well, where we're going, as a task force, where we're going to present a country readiness assessment. That was the mandate of the task force, to say, as a country, where do we stand? And are we ready for 4IR or not? So we're doing that in the background now. And then we're also going to discuss our findings and our policy recommendations at that conference. And then secondly, we're also busy working on the legislative checklist, where we're going to come up with a toolkit to say, a law should have this and that to be 4IR enabling, or to be able to keep up with emerging technologies. Otherwise, you're going to have laws that are not keeping up with technology. And that is not what we want as a country. You want to ensure that the legal framework keeps up with all the technology that we want to implement or to keep up with. And we have discovered that has not been the case. And then definitely we're going to deliver on the national digital strategy. So with that said, that has been my presentation, and I hope I've answered everything that I was asked to do. I know I was also asked to speak about the 5G, national 5G position, and we just thought as a task force that is not our mandate. Probably MICT or maybe CREN would be in a better position to respond on that, but not the task force. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I'm from the university, library sector.
Yes.
Who are we benchmarking with in terms of this subject context as a country? Thank you.
And maybe also, I heard you, thank you so much for the presentation. You make reference to the the need for artificial intelligence institute or institution or something or a body. It's just but how do we arrive something like that, that we need this? It's more like, this is something I informed the colleagues from the Ministry of Trade when it comes to, during the process of this, what is this document they are developing, the African development. The point I made, we need economic unit or market unit, I call it market unit in ministries. What you are suggesting now, it's based on the need that as we move on the market, there are this issue that we need, and I agree with you. Artificial intelligence is one of the things that we need, but do we need to have it institutionalized? Or we need a framework that governs the process of developing within that domain? I think we need a framework that help us as we within that domain of artificial development. So it's just so we don't really, we are creating a lot of fight among ourselves because of institution and who's supposed to be in this institution. That's how we are creating fight, and it's unnecessary. Sometimes it's unnecessary. It's really just to complement each other. So I think I have a lot to say on this one. Maybe I should wait for the conference. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions from the lecturer, the IUM lecturer, because he really said a lot of things about OIR maybe? Can we give him a chance? Dr. Paulus, are you okay? All right. Okay.
I have one. The issue of 5G and AI. It's true that we can't have AI without 5G in Namibia. Just hear that A. We have been told we need 5G in order for us to prosper in AI, artificial intelligence. Is it true?
Okay.
But answer with the question.
Okay. Should I repeat your question?
Yeah.
Is it, so the question, let me correct me if I'm wrong. So is it true that we only need 5G for us to realize fourth industrial revolution? Is that correct?
There are lots of others.
Yes. AI, artificial intelligence. No. The answer is no. And I will explain why I'm saying no. Artificial intelligence is the mimic of our behaviors and activities into machines that only need higher processing capacity in hardware, massive processing capability in hardwares, multiple processors, and enough RAM, memory. Additionally, you need faster internet or faster network, not necessarily 5G. 5G is mobile network. The processing of data faster, the way we process when, for example, I will give you an example. When you are approaching the road and there's a car coming very faster, so obviously you sense that the car is very faster and I will not be able to cross the road without me being hit by the car. So that's now when you now have a robot that you have implemented software and additional sensors around its body and be able to detect, the robot should be able to detect that the car is moving faster than my speed that I could cross the road. That's now artificial intelligence implementation into machines. So, and you don't need 5G. So the software could be sitting within the body of a robot, or can be implemented that they sense through a network, which is now 5G is much faster than 4G. or if it can be linked to a fixed network, then that's also possible. For example, automotive industry, where they have self-driving cars, they don't need 5G because the system is within the built-in maps and roads, and they have sensors to sense objects around them. And there's no 5G required. What you need is capable software that can process massive data and do analysis very faster, and understanding the neural network algorithms that enables you now to implement artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc, for the insightful answer. And that goes to now, we have issued the indemnity and third party. Where does it lie? Is it software? Or is it, like you say, the robot you sense and the robot fail, I bump. Where is the indemnity? That's why we're asking that. Where is indemnity now? The robot owner, the software owner, there are 10 people are involved in that. I'm just asking for clarity and for others to benefit.
Thank you very much, again, for the question. That will be lying with the owner of the robot. Now, if the robot is having a software that is failing or sensors around it that is failing, then the owner of the robot should be able to sue whoever provided the sensors. Huh? Am I? Okay. So, and the framework now, if you don't have a legal framework where you are conducting your, or having a legal framework that enables you to have a platform of engagement with the robots, and also be able to have data processing facilities, that you have a legal framework that enables you, then obviously we are failing somehow. Because if an accident happens and I'm sending robots on the road and they are bumping, people are bumping them, and they are not sensing anything, then obviously I'm causing problem, but it will be subjected to sort of vandalism. It's not properly articulated as a crime within its domain, if I may put it that way.
Yes. All right. All right. The question from the university: who are we benchmarking ourselves with? We are benchmarking ourselves with a couple of countries. You know, like I said in my initial slides, that we have foreign nationals that are also serving in the task force. For example, Prof. Marwala, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, he was the presidential chairperson of their 4IR task force. So we are definitely benchmarking ourselves with South Africa, but most importantly with countries that we are in the same economic space. But what we have realized is that as a country, we are really behind, but it doesn't say much because we can actually leapfrog. That's a good thing with revolutions. You don't have to pass through the third to be able to go to the fourth. So we can also leapfrog. And we don't want to remain behind because there's so many benefits that one can actually get from these technologies and so forth. So, but like I said, as a country, we are somehow a little bit behind. Like, for example, I want to make reference to Rwanda, who just launched their 4IR sender. That they even have a sender, and in the world we only have like 13 or 14 senders, and Rwanda is African country is the first. Even South Africa does not have that. So we are trying to benchmark ourselves with the best, and you'll see that in our final report, in which we make our recommendations that we really are benchmarking ourselves with the best, and definitely also with countries that are in the same economic space. In terms of what Franz asked, I think I would leave his questions or comments to he really needs to attend the 4IR conference in June. Yeah, you're actually invited. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it will be chaired and convened by the president. So it will be very good because we are inviting academia, policy analysts, and everybody, and just to try and unpack this 4-hour topic. Thank you so much.
Miss Hamoka, please just stand here. Lady, gentlemen. Okay, please, another round of applause. Thank you. We appreciate you and that you made time for us this afternoon. And we're just gonna push right through. No coffee breaks, no cocktails, no fun, all right? Let's just quickly continue on with our final session for this afternoon. It's all about gender and information communication technology. I know there was something online already, an online dialogue, which was very interesting. A lot of great subjects came up. We'll be joined by Mrs. Anna Amomo from ISOC, the Internet Society Namibia. Mrs. Amomo, if you could join us so we can wrap up our final session. Please give a warm welcome to the podium. Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been a very, very interactive day, and I hope to be as brief as possible. Also loud enough so that I can wake those who are asleep. And obviously, because of my stance here as an activist, and a member of civil society, I will be from time to time putting a lot of emphasis on particular things. Just also, I'm not going to entirely repeat everything that was already spoken about. Yes, my name is Anna Momo David. I am the president of the Internet Society Namibia chapter. We are an NGO/civil society organization. We are member-based. Don't ask me for a business card because we are an online organization. And of course, what we do is advocate for digital rights and inclusion. Very happy to have been invited and be included in today's presentation. I'm not going to dwell too much on the aspects of gender and ICT because in the very beginning there was something said that the internet is gender neutral. However, I wish to inform you that there are certain gender aspects that need to be addressed, particularly relating to the female gender and encouraging it. So I'm going to jump right into it. I had to amend my presentation just so that we are able to move along. In terms of SDGs, what the Internet Society does is support women and girls in the ICT sector. And what we also do is make sure that they are not forgotten. SDG 5 particularly focuses on gender and empowering women through, amongst other things, information and communication. Information and communication, I have my cell phone here because this Mac device I'm not familiar with, but the literacy pertaining to using the gadgets and being proactive to be able to sense a scammer, not using AI, obviously, but skills that have been built or taught to me as a woman, as a girl, because the same violence that I do go through, possibly, I'm able to spot on an online conversation. Another area that I also want to pin particularly on is the issue of access, which equals to safety, increasing the skills of a woman and the leadership of a girl in ICT also makes provision for being able not only to access but to be more tactful when either being bullied, when either being attacked, knowing that the internet is in a space of its own. We spoke of employers looking for you and your social media. So how do I ensure that at the end of the day, respond to a bully or a online violation to my rights in a manner that I know my employer is not going to use against me at the end of the day? These things are online, they're forever online. So how do I go from being a victim to a victorious in this particular situation? So what the Internet Society does or is doing is breaking the industry stereotype. By industry stereotype, I'm specifically speaking about ICT was generally meant to be or thought out to be a men-dominated sector. It was meant to have supercomputers that needed to be carried, and the women were left to the gentle work of software development and doing the calculations to calibrate these things. However, at this moment, what the Internet Society is doing is building partnerships and special interest groups to break the narrative and growing the internet and making it more for women in the tech space, not just on the social media, in the websites, and in the back end. So I quoted one of our special interest groups, which is promoting a global neutral space that works towards the involvement of women in technology and contribute to reducing the gender gap in the field. So I want to touch a little bit on our recently launched Status of Online Violence report that was launched at the end of last month. So basically what this report meant to do was just give a better understanding of what online violence is against women. It was information that was firsthand documented. Why I'm pointing this out is there's been talk of there's no information, database centers and all these things. But with the work that ISOC is actually doing, we're able to put ourselves in a position to have this information. Whether it's something that needs to be reported to ITU, we can put ourselves in a position to say that this is what we have done. This is a country analysis, and this is where we foresee things to be going. This also allows us then to move into an area and a space that can better our institutions, that can better our society. Ms. Elizabeth earlier alluded to what she called the access, skills, and attitude. The attitude of the victims also then changes, because within the report, you will also be able to establish that a lot of the victims tended to go away from using social media sites. But this is not where we want the sector to go into. It's rather to encourage women and make sure that we manifest saviors, survivors, and at the end of the day, capture or make these inspirational stories. How do we mitigate the gap? Because of the non-statistics online based on online violence and the information of national info, there is something that the UN Secretary Antonio Guterres highlighted on in June 2019, where he said that the full data will take time to collect, but the trends are clear. So if the trends are clear, what are we doing about it as civil society, as government, as people on the ground? Through the conversations we had today, Dr. Admaya Mare alluded to the patrilineal society where women are faced with this notion that they are owned by men. So we need to be able to break that. Frederico Lengs said that if civil society organizations can get together, build a coalition, and actually he invited most of us here to be able to reach out to him and work towards a common good. Lamek spoke about open data. If the information that is gathered out there, or if there's a database that people can allude to, one of the people missing in the room is probably people who deal with psychosocial support, possibly Lifeline, Childline, to be able to understand where the victims go after this. The reports are endless. We can't always use the classics as alluded to, Betty Davids, Sharon Shimbundu, and those. There are others that we really do not know, but because they are undocumented. But if I can go in a place and say that I'm a victim, this is where I'm at, these information can be gathered. So in terms of initiatives, we need to highlight meaningfully the meaningfulness of girls in ICT. This now is on reports and also stakeholders' efforts and conveying the impact on reaching out to the female gender means in the ICT space. I want to go to where to start. I know the ITU has a project called Girls in ICT. They've actually designated a whole day on girls in ICT, but I believe that it's not just a day event, that we need to get the gender aspects ratio worked out. It's an annual basis. So we need to start with deliberate action. It just coincidentally happens that about 2 weeks ago, the leadership of ISOC changed to women only. Yes. So the leadership of ISOC is now at the forefront of what I believe is the initiative that the DRIF22 is looking for. And amongst other things, if you look at the motto and all these things that speak to the ICT in the Namibian context, there's no way that we're able to discuss and exclude. I know that obviously there's going to be talk of what about the boy child and what about all of these other things, but then we need to understand that in order for you to educate, in order for you to expand, you do need the female gender. Whether education begins at home, usually with the mothers, usually with the big sisters advising the rest of the household, acting as deputy parents and things like that. So we need to be able to carry these mandates out. So before I conclude, I just wanted to say that what we need to do in terms of the efforts leaving here today is encourage girls and women to pursue careers in STEM, particularly in ICT. I know a lot of people would be like, yes, but look at the enrollment at NAST, at IUM. Yes, they are enrolling, but what happens down the line? These are the producers of the population. They are the ones who usually have to sacrifice a big chunk of their lives just to ensure that whatever is going to happen needs to happen. And then there are also the highest number of dropouts. So how do we then ensure that at the end of the day, these women and girls are at a level or at par with their male counterparts, being it in the salary scale or at the end of the day, even if they work as non-graduates, that means they would still get that little bit less opposed to what the other gender is getting. The other area is getting girls inspired to work in a career in STEM. I am one of the ICT leaders here. Emilia Ngikembwa, who just left, is another one of those leaders. Nashilongo Garvasius, Elizabeth Kamuteva, Tonata Kadila, when she's not here, she's also an inspiration to those who listen to her, to those who watch her, to those who follow her. So we need to get more women involved who are working in the ICT space so that they can inspire others by not only the work that they do, but to also get other women to work. Until a while ago, I didn't know that Grace was an economist, but she's in the 4IR, which means that it's a matter of creating a bridge in whatever career it is that we follow, that we encourage other females and other women, our sisters, our mothers, cousins and daughters to be inspired. Another and final aspect, I believe, is community engagement and promoting the collaborations through partnerships. There has been so much talk of what MTC is doing in terms of getting internships. Let's get our women in the boardrooms. Let's support the women ICT entrepreneurs. Let's get women educated. Let's get all these small things that we do on a daily basis just to encourage and also work with other organizations. So if you see Anna knocking on your door at the end of this, don't wonder, okay, what does ISOC want? Because at the end of the day, I am ISOC and we are our institutions. So these are the deliberate actions that we do need to take just to get more women involved in ICT, more women to not fall victim, more women to be encouraged to carry out a career, enter the boardrooms, wear the suits, get the briefcases and everything else in between. Like aforementioned, it's the Internet Society. I'm the chairperson, Anna Momo David, and that is my email address. Do contact us, do reach out to us. From time to time, we carry out projects. From time to time, we do obviously need the advice and to pursue and convince multiple stakeholders. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anna, for the insightful session. I have a question, and my question actually it's concerning about gender and ICT. I want to find out, do you focus mainly, like there is no age limit when it comes to gender girls in ICT, and when it comes to also community outreach, do you do a age limit? Do you go back to the community and look at the kids or young girls that are in schools that are really also might be a victim of what is happening with online? Or do you mainly just focus, for example, maybe students or people that are working and they're mainly just females?
Thank you, Anna, and I wish to comment on your team consisting of mothers only. Well done. I don't know how you capture the men to stay away, but it's true, as we said, technology is neutral, but the uptake of girls and women in the ICT is low because of those stereotypes you have mentioned. But most importantly is also to bring women into the boardrooms of ICT discussions. Is where the change can be triggered. And I really commend the quote from ITU, and ITU now have almost in all their engagement, you want women involvement or girl involvement. So that is the trend internationally, that where are the women? It's not more IT. No, we have moved away from IT. You rarely hear IT So that was also the persuasion. IT was more of the tools and computer. Now we have made ICT, and that is no more an issue of men and gentlemen. I come to that later during dinner, but it's about bringing the girl child into mainstreaming into the sector so that they can inspire. The uptake, it will take much longer because of set up social norms, our cultural behaviors, and if there is one form at home, who will it belong at the village? Obviously, the gentleman, isn't it? The auntie will just a receiver. Don't go the way, it's your call, it's your call. So we need to change, but I think bringing the women into the boardroom, we trigger a change in our mindset. Thank you very much for the wonderful notes. I don't see presentation, well crafted notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Depanda, what we've done is, as ISOC, we initially only conducted training with high school learners. However, with the initiatives that we do intend to do now, they will feature primary school learners from grade 5 as well. This is also because they are the ones who currently have the phones. They are the ones who are more tech savvy opposed to the parents, and they are also at the same time at that age where they are more vulnerable and susceptible to whatever they are fed. They are likely to take it in. So with time, we'll be able to carry out a training where we will focus on getting young children to understand what is media and digital, information and digital literacy, so that when they get a high on the phone, they do understand that it could be a predator, it could be somebody who is not of the interest that they are looking for at that age.
I think mine is just a comment, not a question. It's just to rather encourage, like you've alluded to, education is important. Digital literacy and media information literacy for our young girls is very key. I say this because of, there's a popular blog site, Oma Juices, and she always highlights something that usually the people that wants to come and expose other girls are girls or women that wants to expose other women, which is ironic, and yet we are saying we want women to come out and we want to empower women, yet we have women actually trying to pull their fellow women down, which you don't see a lot in the men-dominated society. So I think it's also something to highlight that it's very key, education, and also promoting the interest for women to empower other women. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think it also boils down again to the skills, the access, the skills, and the attitude. Because once you don't, if you don't understand that you being a woman are bringing down another woman, if you don't understand that, then obviously your attitude would be that. So all these things would then come in. Emilia said there's things that Karen cannot do alone. So this is now where civil society comes in. This is where we collectively come in also as individuals with our individual skills moving to our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anna, just stand right there. Thank you, Mrs. Amoma. Just another round of applause to all our speakers, and all of you managed to stay until the end. We are still here, and this year's digital rights, and I struggle with the word digital rights and inclusion forum, the theme towards a digitally inclusive Namibia. It's sort of, if you think about it, it's the way we are socialized, right? To each and every one of the systemic problems that we got to listen to, and even solution. It's the way we are socialized, be it the male-dominated environment, the patriarchal society, be it solution to artificial intelligence, that it's mimicking the way we are socialized, be it access to information bill. Everything mimics the way we behave in our society. So there's similar problems online, offline rather, will crop up online, be it gender-based violence, all the different aspects and how we maneuver and move forward in this space. And it's also the way I'd like to open our final session. It's interactive, so it should be fun. I know the microphone's gonna stay here, but could we get the second mic for my people in the back? No, it's fine, we've got 2 microphones, don't we? We're gonna lively things up a bit for our final session, the role of different stakeholders in achieving a digitally inclusive and rights respecting Namibia. That's the theme. Just one more time, it's the role of different stakeholders in achieving a digitally inclusive and rights respecting Namibia. Those stakeholders involve civil society organizations, academia, we've got the press, mass media, government, regional bodies. We all play a role in achieving this goal. So I'd like to hear from you, perhaps what role you believe some of the stakeholders they are playing that role, but where do they need to sort of amplify? Where do they need to put their foot down or speed things up or slow things down? I'd like to start with one of the more vocal ones. I know you have something to say, and then we'll take it across the room. Maybe we'll get 3 or 4, and I'd like to hear from the young ones as well. Yes? All right, the ones behind you, not you. I know you're experienced. What do you believe is the role of the different stakeholders we got to hear from today? Be it the regulatory authority, be it the academia, the professors, the press, the media, government. What do you believe their role is in achieving this digitally inclusive and rights respecting Namibia? I'm going to ask you. No, him, yes.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. I think the role that stands out most for me is awareness raising and education, because I feel like there's 80% of the blame that I've seen today has gone to ministry/government, and 0 has gone to individuals or users, or perhaps 10, 20%. And that's because the information we've received today is just to us here, or very limited of us that are privileged online as well. But these are informations that through these different stakeholders, raising adequate awareness about the situation on ground, about the issues on ground, about mitigating ways to solve these issues. Perhaps we have a lot of people that are aspiring to go into the ICT sector in the women's society, in the Kavango East, in the Zambesis and all, but they do not have this amount of access to information that we have with the privilege of being in this session. So I think for me, awareness raising and adequate information being disseminated in terms of all these issues that we are facing with regards to the internet, with regards the ATI bills, the cyber laws and all of that. I believe the foundation is for us having adequate awareness for young people, and then self-regulation then comes to play from there on. And then people are aware enough to know that I can find out from my ministry why the ATI bill is not passed. I can find out from MTC and Telecom why I'm having to pay so much for data. Yeah. I can find out from why we do not have artificial intelligence. And that's when everyone can speak about this, because my biggest issue is, and I don't know if there's a media house covering this right now, is how much of this discussion has actually got into Katima. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was going to be my next angle. Is there anyone here from the media, aside from myself? Because I would like to ask a few questions. No? NBC over there? Not from the media? Okay, I'm from the media. I'm here in my private capacity, of course, but I'm a broadcast journalist. And what I've realized, not many of my colleagues came or stuck around. When I say my colleagues, not just those from the media house I work for, but came physically to attend. Maybe some are online because they can afford to. And that's how the simplicity and the access to internet in our office spaces, not at home, but in our office spaces, has changed our newsrooms, the media industry, in terms of accessing this information right at one's desk and not feeling the need to go out. But if you are a journalist, you're a humanitarian, right? And if you're a humanitarian, to capture the audience, the mood, the message, you'd have to be there physically. So it was a bit disappointed to see that not a lot of my colleagues came to capture this, to get all the knowledge, the information that was shared. Maybe they'll download big documents online or receive an email or a press release, but it's never really the same. So when we put such functions together, I'm not saying it's the organizer's fault, because I know there are so many events taking place. There's a big Minds and Energy, conference, not conference, but what is that? Is it a seminar? Yes, at a very fancy place. So a lot of people are there, but these are the stories that at the end of the day will matter to future generations, right? And if it remains untold, the solutions we found or the messages that we received here, if that's not told, then we can't spread the message. So somehow, some way, we need to, suppose I'll do it myself today, so it's fine. I'd like to hear from government. Oh, okay. It's fine. No, it's not. I know it's very simple for you. The role of different stakeholders in achieving a digitally inclusive and rights respecting Namibia. What are the different roles we need to play here? One of your other colleagues? You have a, okay, oh, okay, Franz.
Thank you.
Okay, let's just give him the.
Okay.
Oh,
I think it's fine now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and maybe also really the colleagues from the ministry also really just have to salute to the organizer. I think we are talking of the media. We are here. We are maybe what I do, colleagues. What I do really, I capture events like this. It's something that I've been doing for some time, and most of this content on this I edit. Like tonight, I have to edit some of the material. Tomorrow there should be something on my YouTube channel. So it has grown now. Very soon I'll be very rich. So that's not the point. But really the issue, I think it's within that my thinking is really within that ecosystem of technology. Africa as a continent, Namibia in particular, we spoke of the fourth industrial revolution, and nations in the world, they've been growing and developing various instruments how they survive. And I think for us as Africa, as Namibian, this is a challenge. There is no one to blame for our inability to be behind. That is on us. Whether it's at the policy level or just as citizen being vocal or active to participate and to influence policy within the domain of everything. That is on us. You can say it's SWAPO, you can say it's this government, you can say it's Zuma, but honestly, as a patriot in the continent, we must take that responsibility to change the dynamic. Wherever you are, try to influence. And I think that's, for me, it's really the question of policy. Policy matter. And I think when I was making this point of the Ministry of Information, whether it's telecom, whether it's colleague, we need to find a way to harmonize all these things so that we can really be able, because at the moment there's a lot of it's not infighting, but fighting for privilege in terms of status. This is ours, this is ours. So those type of things will not help us to move forward. So for me, my appeal to all of us is really just to be bigger. These things is much big. it's much big. If I tell you, like, you take your phone, this is a Samsung. The operating system here is Android. If you have an iPhone, the operating system is iOS. So basically, in the continent, we cannot produce phone if we don't have operating system. We cannot manufacture car if we don't have operating system, given that now we are moving seriously in the ecosystem of artificial intelligence, where you need those electrical appliances. You need to have a system. So this is one of the thinking that my contribution is really just an appeal for us to be a bit vigorous when it comes to these things, because it's much bigger and it's not something that we can blame on anybody. Being a citizen of the 21st century, you need to play a role. So I think I will leave it there. Yeah, it was just around that. So I truly feel like as a country, as a continent, we need to have operating system. As a country, as a continent, the good doctor here, he mentioned this area of storage. Google now, we can't rely just Google storing our data on Google or having our data with Facebook. We must have our own infrastructure at that level. We have to have our own infrastructure. And I think that is the kind of thinking. I just didn't know when you were talking, doctor, you mentioned that now IUM now they are using putting student on internship to produce software. That is that's a good thing. But the question also, it's the operating system where those software are hosted. That's also another question, or another, like the storage. And I think for me that is quite a concern, because we have to be alive and awake to that reality, because otherwise you are just rendering development and you are not moving anywhere. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Franz. Dr. Shetekela, would you like to maybe expand on the role of academia, specifically pertaining to development in AI and the training of software developers, what he was saying? What do you think can be done better there? And how can we fast track, expedite the part where we actually get our own software developers working and actually doing something, making a change?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll start with maybe one critical thing that perhaps the government haven't noticed, or they've been noticing. There is a wide gap between academia and industry. That's one thing that, and it's known to many, even within the industry, when graduates are finishing, they are sort of not being given opportunity to address challenges, because the experience in the industry is sort of different, that they are still have to learn or given some mechanisms on how to approach challenges. And that's have merely affected more heavily to the implementations and robust activeness of younger professionals who are just coming from academia, to then put back to certain experienced professionals who are in the industry. That's now the part. Now, how do we improve in making sure that we have professionals that are very equipped, and when they are coming from the academia, they quickly get up and provide solutions to the industry? So the industry works in relationship, or should work in relationship with the academia. In many countries where you have ministries, I can be...
Doctor, sorry
yes?
to interrupt. If you could just stand up, please.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
The aspects of education in many countries are being driven by the government, because the government have specific projects that they need specific individuals with a certain set of skills in many aspects. It can be ICT, health, agriculture, for example, and the country has an agenda or a strategy where it wants to go. And within the expert of the industry, then they tailor-made a professional set skills and knowledge that in 5 years, our expertise in the industry, they only know this little, but in the next 5 years, we need experts who are coming from academia with additional set of skills. So, and when they come in to join capital projects of the government, they are able and capable to take over from the aging expertise. So that's one thing that we can do as a country, and that will also make us improve or help the government to improve socioeconomic developments in other sectors also, not just ICT.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, please stand up. Anna, you can go after her, no? Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Yvonne. Doctor mentioned already the impact or the role of academia, which had to do with research. There are so many students that have perfect or excellent research projects which the government can use, but then there's the disconnect between academia, the institutions, and the government itself. The other thing was mass media and the press. We have a problem of reporting sexual and gender-based violence issues when it comes in Namibia, a very big problem, because in the end, we end up protecting or giving perpetrators the courage to continue perpetrating these acts because, let's say, mass media or press vilified a victim of sexual and gender-based violence. Instead of protecting that victim, we are protecting perpetrators. That, in a sense, it's excluding the victims who suffer from this, whether it's now online or offline, sexual and gender-based violence.
I'd just like to find out, this is not a usual occurrence of vilifying victims, because that's not what I read in the press, right?
It is, actually.
Your sources?
I can use the Namibian is very good at vilifying victims.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, please continue.
Okay, the other one has to do with government and regional bodies when it comes to bureaucracy. I was very interested in how memory institutions like the archives, the museums, and libraries use social media to reach the masses. There is a lot of, I believe the exclusion comes from the fact that there's a lot of bureaucracy in achieving this, the use of social media within these institutions. So there is something I think that can be talked about, if I'm making sense.
The use of social media in
Yes.
reference to?
Like just digital, anything digital, electronic, use
Yeah.
of social media, whether it's the museum using social media to reach masses. Like the young audience are the ones actually, the bigger audience right now. But then we don't really have a way to connect with that younger audience or the ones that use ICT, which is social media nowadays.
Are you saying the media doesn't connect with what? I think I missed the...
It's the bureaucracy of where if one institution has to use social media,
Okay.
what steps they need to go through. There's like 100 steps. I did my research on that. There's 100 steps on how to, for your institution to actually start a government institution now.
Like a social media policy?
Yes.
Within the framework
Yes,
of
social
the, okay.
media policy. So we need frameworks for social media strategy, social media policy, and everything else.
Okay. Thank you. Just quickly, let's take Anna and then Mr. Haipinge, and then you come. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Tonata.
Yes.
I think before I came into the ICT space to the level that I'm in, I actually worked as an HR officer, ensuring that the organization I worked for had the skills that it needed to be able to carry out its day-to-day running in whatever department it is that it wants to have somebody trained. So these people would actually come in as trainees, entry level, fresh out of school, have a bursary system set in place. If you don't qualify for the bursary system, then they would train you on the job for 6 months. They had an artisan program. They have a mid-career program. They have fellowships and collaborations with other university and institution, having a collaboration with a higher learning institution to build the perfect individual in a particular trade. I don't know if we have those in the country for ICT. When I came in, I had a burning desire to learn programming. I learned to code through NAST and other institutions. I believe I build the perfect individual for myself in the ICT space, of which I know had an aspect of activism in it. I had an aspect to learn and feed others of what I know. I believe that at the end of the day, when we say let's get people, it's also a matter of addressing the gap. It's a matter of building perfect individuals for the various areas or departments in ICT that we need. When we speak of access to information, we want to know who's the information commissioner, what is his qualification? Can I study at the end of my master's to be the information commissioner? The AI Institute, what do I need to do? Do I have to shadow Lamek Amorongo for a couple of years so that I can learn? As a NASFAF beneficiary, how do I ensure that I am able to pay that money back if I don't have a job? Can NASFAF not set up a plan, a strategy that then says, okay, these are the particular individual organizations we believe that you need to move to. You studied AI technology, and why not go to whoever is on a corporate level? Then you get molded so that at the end of the day, being it the software that we need to develop to feed the e-government system that speaks to natives and home affairs in all these other places, that I can already be able to set up from where I am. Yeah. So I believe that needs to be a work in progress, a stepping stone to where we want ICT to be. There's also a governance issue. When I speak of governance, it's a matter of taking accountability. I know Elizabeth will probably defend MICT that they're doing everything that they possibly can, but then MICT is not the final decision maker. Yeah. There's the Cabinet Standing Committee, there's OPM that is the ultimate decision maker at the end of the day. But if we can build institutions based on the groundwork that is established, that says in order for the National Museum to be on Facebook, there's a policy. Yes, who is addressing this policy? And actually, how many people are interested? How many young people are interested in visiting a museum, if not for a photo op at the end of the day? So all these things need to be addressed.
We need to start raising more cultured young people, I suppose.
It is a matter of raising culture, yeah, but then it's also a matter of possibly
driving them.
Yeah. And also, it's not just, I was at a session once where Emma said that she needs to go speak to a particular uncle to ensure that a decision is made. But that's not the way things should be. make everybody aware of what the status quo is and where ultimately we wish to see the Republic of Namibia.
Thank you, Anna. Mr. Haipinge, we're going to Mr. Haipinge, then the ministry, because we need to start wrapping things up, no?
Yeah, I think Haipinge will just share his points when he's do the closing remarks.
Okay, perfect. Ministry of Information and Communication Technology representative, Mrs. Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. All protocol observed at the last minute. I would like to thank the organizers of this event. I think for the past 2 years, COVID have also despaired us a bit. It's the first engagement of this kind after the COVID pandemic, and it's quite enlightening. You have brought in the right people for the right topic. I think if we continue like this, if we don't change the system, first we start with our mindset. I think from today we have taken 2 takeaways from these discussions, and we should not deter and get tired that nothing is happening. One day we see the light over there after the tunnel, they say like that. So from a government, really we are doing what is best and to the best of our abilities, but there are funding issues, there are other stakeholders coordination, but, and I just have said it, we are not passing the laws. You heard this is a strong law, but it's a cabinet committee for discussion. How long will they take it, the access to information? It's out of the hand of technocrats, now is with the lawmakers. So we are also moving through this stakeholders chain. Somehow you get stuck because you don't have control over the process, you know. So, but all in one, as from the ministry, we always support what the sector partners are doing. We are here for you. We don't hide any information. We share information also to learn from you, because sharing information is 2 ways. I learn from you, you learn from me. So on that note, the organizers know us very well. We are always in partnership, and we continue to provide our support. Somehow we also give you the same information because we have no other update. Otherwise we lie to you. So sorry for that, but that is what we have, and we share with you all the time, anytime.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before, okay, please, the floor is yours.
All right, sorry, just 10 seconds. I'm going to talk about the role of stakeholder. What I'm striving to see in stakeholders to have digital inclusive and also right in Namibia is the flow of information, constant information. I've actually picked from what Nashirongo researcher was having, and also from CRAN. I think that if we can have same constant information, it's going to help us in a sense of obtaining information. And also, I think in a situation where as a student perhaps might be, or a media, for example, if I have to report in here, I will end up reporting different information. I might be use a source from CRAN, what they were providing the session day. And then someone will use Nashirongo's session. So I'm striving to see same constant information sharing from all the stakeholders in order for us to have a digital inclusive in Namibia.
But
So
how will, if you need it to work, your stakeholders cannot always have the same information. You need to go do the homework and research just a bit further and extract what you need and compare.
Okay.
Otherwise, if they all have the same information, we wouldn't be having any problems, right? They would all be in agreement. So that's the whole point. You need to get different vantage points and different data and then go and compare, and then you have to put in the extra work.
That's a little bit debatable, but yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I believe maybe one of the stakeholders that should have been included, those living with disabilities and impairments, that part of our community and our society was not brought to the table. We didn't leave a seat for them to express the challenges they face when it comes to information communication technology, the Internet of Things, and so forth. Hopefully next time around we can do that. And before we wrap things up, we have the online survey. Have you done your homework? Have you received anything? Okay, Paulina will resend that email. Where is she? Have you received it? Please just go through. You're done? Okay. Just try and go through and do it. Then, yeah, it's time for our closing remarks. Is Dr. Sadrach Shihomeka here? Or who's? He will delegate to, okay. Mr. Haipinge, please, if you could come to the podium for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Chairperson has a long shift today. Delegated. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to see still a lot of faces in the room. Up until the very end of our very fruitful engagement, even though we have somehow gone beyond the time that we have on the timetable. Thank you so much. I would like also to really thank the Director of Ceremonies, Tonata. You have been very brilliant throughout, and your energy levels have been constant from the very beginning in the morning until now. So as closing remarks, really, I don't think it will be effective for me to do a summary of the presentations. I believe that the theme, digital inclusion, rights to be respected of everyone, is an interest and a passionate interest of everyone in the room, not only indicated by your attendance, but also your participation and, of course, the fact that you're still here. I would just like to perhaps mention a few takeaways that we can take from today going forward. This very last session was about what is the contribution from each sector or field towards the issue at hand. And I think one way that I can contribute to the points that I already mentioned is that we do need some sort of vision to align ourselves towards. We have a lot of role players, we have academia, we have government, we have civil society, we have private enterprises and so on, each with a particular niche and interest and role to play, but we need something that unifies us. And for that, I think we do need some sort of grand vision, whether that has to be led by government or civil society, or it has to be a collaborative effort from all the stakeholders involved. I think that's open to discussion, but there's a need for a vision, a road plan that will then guide people on what is the end goal, what are we all achieving or planning to achieve, and then what is the contribution and the role of each one. I think the role of civil society also cannot be emphasized, especially given that the ICT sector is not, it's very crucial to every civil citizen in the country, but it's not similar to, let's say, health or education. It's an area that also is sort of connected with a lot of vested interests. A very good example is the sort of catch-22 that the government finds itself in, where it, on one hand, has got entities that pay dividends to it, and by almost coming up with policies that will lead to a reduction in revenue, would almost feel like it's hurting its own revenue streams. But at the same time, it's also responsible to strengthening the role and the power of regulators like CREN. So when you have role players in a space who have vested interests like that, then the role of civil society, who almost have not much to lose, becomes more pronounced. So I think it's really important that civil society organizations
continue to push and play a role in this space, especially because of the facts I just mentioned. Education is key, I think. The ICT space and digital rights will not only be achieved by technology and capital investment alone. It's important that we continue to promote the value of education for people to be able to take advantage of access to these digital services. And my take on the issue of, for example, the need for Africa to come up with an operating system of its own, the need to wean ourselves from dependency on service providers such as Google and the cloud and so on. I think for me, it's really a fundamental philosophical question that we need to ask ourselves. I honestly feel that Africa as a continent need a serious introspection in terms of what our relationship with our former colonial sort of masters is. It is a fact that the pre-independence trade routes and trade relationships that former colonies have with their former colonizers has stayed the same. Globalization hasn't really changed much. It has basically just perpetuated that relationship. And because of that, African economies have really not strengthened their sort of manufacturing industries. They have continued to over-rely on being the purchaser and consumers of goods developed elsewhere. Where elsewhere? Countries basically that were former colonizers. We buy goods from Europe, from the US, from the West. So until we interrogate that and we wean ourselves from being consumers of services and goods, we will continue to have these problems and always be dependent. And they say data is the new oil. So we are basically giving our data for free to these countries on top of the raw materials, the true raw materials like oil and diamonds that we continue giving. So I think we need a serious introspection as Africans, and of course in Namibia in particular as well. And we need to set our priorities in order so that it becomes easier to make decisions like this. At the moment, we really followers. Every technology that comes, it's almost like it is a badge of honor to adopt something first. You are a pioneer by adopting something that somebody has developed elsewhere. But we are not focusing on developing software, hardware of our own at home. So we are more of gaining pride in adopting other people's innovations. So I think those are the serious questions that we need to address. And once we do that, then we will also be in a position, or we will at least pave a way towards addressing issues of inclusivity, because we will be in charge and we will have a stronger voice on the direction of the technologies that we are adopting, that we are using. And of course, it will be more in response to the needs and the context at home. And it would not come with ideological implications from elsewhere, developed in societies elsewhere that are not compatible with our context. And finally, I think research and development, it's something that we preach, and I think my colleague from IUM has said it already, that we preach a lot about things that we don't really implement. If you look at the DGP ratio in terms of the funding that we commit to research in Namibia, compared to, let's say, the average, it is not even worth mentioning. So, and that basically also informs the attitude of policymaking in the country, whether it is research-based, evidence-based or not. I'm not sure how much of policy-making processes in our parliament, in cabinet and so on, are really informed by research done at home. We are still looking, almost valuing foreign experts being flown in. We feel that they bring more valuable knowledge and insight compared to making use of research outcomes and research products that were done in our context, which means they are in a better position to inform decisions here because the evidence was collected here and conclusions were made here rather than somebody who has professorial status, but they have done their research elsewhere. So how much of their expertise really is relevant to our context? So I think more commitment to research, not only to fund more research, but also to make use of evidence coming out of the research back, at home to inform our decision making, I think we'll also be in a better position to solve our problems. With this said, I will really also, again, just thank everybody for your participation and for positively responding to our call. And I wish a safe drive back home tonight. And we hope that we will continue to stay in touch in our networks. We also see this as a network building opportunity that we will continue to have relationships with each other. So next time your civil society body or you have a particular event, please feel free to also invite the Digital Foundation. We'll be happy to attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Haipinge. And if we could all stand so we can end our event in a normal fashion with the national anthem followed by the Africa Union anthem. Yep. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.